one, go.
Hi everyone, welcome to University of Calgary. My name is Ellen, I'll be your tour guide today. This is Brienne and she will be our ASL interpreter for the tour today. So just a little bit about me. I am a current third year student here at the University of Calgary studying psychology and doing a Bachelor of Science. But yeah, I'm super excited to take you all around the university today. So we'll kind of get started with our first stop here. We're currently in our Hunter Student Commons, and so you can kind of think of this place as a bit kind of similar to a library in a sense, except as you can probably hear with all the background noise, it is a very social space. So a lot of students will like to come here and work on projects, assignments, any studying that they have to do with all of their friends or some of their peers from their classes. So this is kind of where a lot of students will get together to do a lot of studying and a lot of their work. So it is a very social space. Something else that's good to know about the Hunter Student Commons is that up on the second floor we actually concentrate two of our biggest student services that we have here on campus. So the one where we normally start our tours from in person is known as the Prospective Students Hub. It is where our recruitment team is located and as well our Prospective Student Engagement team. So this is where students who are looking to apply to the University of Calgary, so prospective students and transfer students will go if they have any questions regarding their application status, transcripts, anything like that. If they have questions about those, then that office is the best place to ask those questions at. And then kind of on the flip side of the second floor, we have something known as the Office of the Registrar or Enrollment Services. So this is where our current UCalgary students can go, mainly if they have any questions about financials, bursaries, student awards, anything like that, as well as the current enrollment status. This is where current students are able to go to benefit from all of that help. And then one last fact to kind of cap it all off about our Hunter Student Commons is that up on the fourth floor we have something known as our Hunter's Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking. So if you guys watching aren't from Calgary, Calgary is actually considered a very entrepreneurial city, and this university really likes to reflect that. As we kind of walk throughout the tour, you might see our logo Start Something kind of plastered all around the university. So that's kind of a key incentive that we have, and to kind of be able to start something at the university, one of the key things that we offer in the Hunter Student Commons is our Hunter's Hub for Entrepreneurial Thinking up on that fourth floor, as I mentioned. So that is where students, if they have some sort of idea for a business, are able to go find any resources, any assistance that they might need to be able to kind of get that knowledge and understanding of how to potentially start up their own business. So it's a really great resource that we do offer here on our campus. Other than that, we'll just kind of continue off onto the next stop. Currently outside of our Hunter Student Commons, and so our next stop is going to be something that is known on campus as the Prairie Chicken. It is just this sculpture behind myself and Brienne here. So this sculpture is essentially one of our really cool on-campus art pieces. Essentially it is meant to be depicting an Alberta wild rose from the bird's eye view, which is our provincial flower. However, since the original artist actually left it unnamed for so long, students decided that it actually looked more like a prairie chicken, and so that's kind of what it has been dubbed. Yeah, so it's kind of a little delicious art piece, and you'll see when the weather is not super cold like it is today, a lot of students will spend their time kind of studying around the prairie chicken. everyone, so welcome to our next stop. This is going to be our administration building. And so this building, kind of a fun fact, we actually went from one of our newer buildings on campus to the oldest building that we have on campus. As I mentioned, it is known as the administration building. And so as the name suggests, it does house a bunch of different administration services here on campus. It also does house most of our Department of Psychology offices as well as labs. So if you are interested in psychology, this could be a really cool place to check out if you ever are on campus. But other than that, the administration building also houses a really cool study space kind of right behind myself and Brienne here. So you might see kind of all the foliage in the background. Essentially, this is a study space that is known as the atrium. And so a lot of students will like to use it to study because it's such a beautiful space with all of the greenery. But also because of all that greenery, it does stay relatively warm in the winters. So as it's getting a lot colder, as you probably saw from the weather outside, a lot of students will like to take advantage of the atrium and the fact that it's so warm for study purposes, and also just a really nice place to relax as well as hang out with others. So in terms of the atrium, there's actually a really interesting story associated with it. So back in the 50s and 60s, when the administration building was kind of first constructed, the atrium was actually used as a smoking spot for a lot of students. So faculty, students, they were told, if you don't want to go outside to take your smoke break, you can just go do it inside the atrium, just go do it there. However, by the time the 90s rolled around, we actually had a bylaw introduced that prohibited indoor smoking. So kindly, everyone did stop. However, something very strange that everyone started noticing a couple weeks after everyone had stopped smoking was that all the plants had suddenly started dying, and they found that no amount of fertilizer, water, sunlight, anything could really help bring them back to life. So a couple weeks after all the plants had officially died off, botanists actually got the chance to do research on these plants and discovered that they actually died due to withdrawal from a nicotine addiction, which I guess is kind of a funny or sad story depending on how you view it, but the plants did all have to be replaced. So while our building itself is around 60 years old, the plants are about half that at about 30. So kind of a funny or sad story depending on how you view it.
But I don't like eating on my gas like that, so I don't like the driveway either. Remember that? Oh my gosh, recently I found out what LRT means. Light rail. That is not a thing anywhere I've been. You know, there's something called a beyond.
Want to walk to the Good Earth?
Yeah, I think so. Exciting window projector.
Yeah. Okay everyone, so welcome to our next stop on the tour. We've kind of entered our sciences sector of the campus. So to be a bit more specific, we currently are in our social science.
I'm ordering this like, are you sure? It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
He was like, don't waste it. I'm like, because they said
Alright everyone, so welcome to our next stop. We are now in our science theaters area. So this this is a space that I like to consider kind of a very quintessential first year location. So kind of what you can't see behind the camera, but essentially off to this side, we do have our two biggest lecture halls on campus, which are known as Science Theaters 140 and 148, and they can each seat upwards of about 400 students each, and they are twin lecture halls. So essentially that means they look the same inside. Maybe they'll just have a few wallpaper differences, for example. But essentially the reason I think of this as a quintessential first year spot is because these classrooms behind us over here are so big. That means they tend to host a bunch of those more general introductory first year classes. So in your first year at UFC, you're very likely to find yourself in either Science Theaters 140 or 148 at least once, and again, especially in your first year. But in terms, again, of these classrooms being some of the biggest we have, they also tend to host exams in addition to hosting classes. So something very neat that we can actually check out kind of right beside me over here is one of our on-campus art sculptures known as the Zipper. And so, like I keep mentioning, the classrooms are very big, so they will tend to host exams in addition to classes. So a lot of students, whether they're going into an exam in one of these classrooms, or if they're just going into anything they need a little boost of good luck on, whether it be an assignment, a project, maybe another exam in a different room, they will come over here and give the Zipper a spin. So it's actually a very cool structure. It spins on two different axes and kind of just spins like this. And essentially spinning the Zipper is supposed to give each of our students good luck on whatever assessment is coming up for them. And now, while it is good luck for most of our students and most of our faculties, unfortunately for our faculty of engineering, it is quite a bad luck charm. So sorry to anyone who is interested in engineering. But if you are curious, the story did kind of start with the fact that an engineering student, apparently before they were going into one of their exams, they had decided to spin the Zipper, but for some reason did it with their arm getting caught in the middle, which resulted in their arm breaking in 3 different places. So very unfortunate, but ever since then we've had all sorts of stories that have been derailing from the Zipper's series of bad luck for the engineering students. One of my personal favorites, I guess, of the unfortunate stories is our previous campus tours ambassador. She actually had a friend graduate from his 4-year degree here in engineering recently, and in his 2nd year he decided to test out the myth of the Zipper to see what kind of truth it held in a sense. So before one of his upcoming exams, he spun the Zipper, and apparently, as she says, that is the only exam that he had ever failed in his 4 years of engineering here at UFC. So a bit unfortunate, but she also did say that he could have maybe studied a little bit more before it. So you can maybe take the story with a bit of a grain of salt, but just kind of one of our fun pieces of campus knowledge for you guys.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cancel that, but I don't think I'll pull.
I'm gonna blame it on who's real because she made me do the real thing.
one's very long. That one's very long. Okay everyone, so welcome to our next stop on the tour. This is a space that is known as Energy, Environment, and Experiential Learning, so otherwise known as EEL because that name is very long, so not a lot of students will like to say it in its full name. So essentially this is one of our really cool spaces on campus because it houses a bunch of our labs. So essentially if you find yourself taking a undergraduate course that is related to the sciences such as archaeology, chemistry, biology, geology, you might also find that that course comes with a lab component, and this is where a lot of those courses will tend to have the lab components in. So essentially, as I mentioned, EEL is a space that is full of a lot of labs. So to give like a general floor plan of how EEL is set up, on the first floor you'll notice that it's a bit more multidisciplinary. So there's a mix of different labs that include some such as physics, robotics, geology, and archaeology. So it's a bit more of a mix, a bit more of a diverse mix that we have. And then up on there's a huge, really cool staircase that is currently all lit up. So this is something on campus that is known as a social staircase. So essentially we have a few of these in some of our buildings on campus, and they're essentially there to kind of promote having a good workspace, being able to be social as the name suggests with other students, just having a good space to do any of your work, interact with others, and essentially hopefully maybe take a little bit of a break in between classes or in between labs. And that's kind of the purpose of our social staircases that we have on campus. And you'll kind of see, I believe, one more as we progress throughout the tour. But essentially with EEL, again, you might, even if you're not necessarily a student in science, you might find yourself coming to this space a lot because it does have a bunch of study spaces around that. We have a bunch of tables, a bunch of different desks that you're able to study in. So even if you're not in science, you might like to come to EEL because it does tend to be a very quiet study space, even if there are a lot of students around.
Hey.
everyone, so welcome to our next stop. This is going to be our Schulich School of Engineering, otherwise just known as our Eng complex. And so while I mentioned back at the zipper that our engineering students don't have the best of luck when it comes to that, you guys actually do have really great luck when it comes to complexes, because this is one of the coolest spaces, at least in my opinion, that we have on our campus. So back in 2016, we were actually able to undergo a big renovation that combined all of our six or so engineering buildings into one giant complex. So that's why we kind of call it our engineering complex as opposed to just a building. But essentially this space, with that renovation, we were actually able to really concentrate on what students had wanted for the Eng space, and what students had wanted was a bright and lively space to connect with others. So as we're walking throughout engineering, as you can see during the tour, you might notice that there are some really cool amenities. So to just list a few that we do have in our Eng complex that might have a bunch of students coming back to this space even if they're not necessarily in engineering, include ping pong tables. We also have foosball machines, pizza vending machines, nap pods on the upper floors, and a bunch more. So those are just to list a few of the things that you might see as we're walking throughout the complex. And do you need to stop at the makerspaces?
You can. You can.
Alright everyone, so as you probably just saw as the camera was panned around, you saw all of the cool things that our engineering complex does have. So it's a great way for students to unwind and kind of take a bit of a break from all of the academic stress that they might be experiencing. So that's something really cool that our Eng complex does have to offer. But what I'm currently standing in front of, or what is behind me right now, is going to be one of our maker spaces that we have on campus. Essentially, UFC does have these spaces that are known as maker spaces, and you can kind of think of them as being a little similar to that Hunter's Hub for entrepreneurial thinking that I mentioned, but with the maker spaces you're able to create a bit more physical and tangible projects in a sense. So for instance, the one I'm standing in front of right now, this is going to be our 3D printing maker space. So essentially this is where students with the proper training and safety training are able to use all of our 3D printers to create personal or academic projects, whatever they would like, and yeah, just to really have fun with it essentially. So something really cool that our makerspace does offer, and I always like to bring this up because I think it's a really cool kind of fun fact, I guess, but essentially the makerspace does create these free 3D printed little dinosaurs, and essentially they kind of just leave them out there for students to take. And if you aren't aware, UCalgary's official mascot is a dinosaur. His name is Rex, so that's kind of the idea behind creating these dinosaurs, and it also gives you a really cool insight into all the little projects that you can create with the makerspaces. everyone, so welcome to our next stop. This is going to be our McEwen Student Center, otherwise known as Mac Hall by most of our students. And so you can kind of think of this place as kind of a big kind of like nexus for all student life, services, as well as activities. Kind of within and throughout Mac Hall, you'll find that there's always something happening, always something to look at, take part in, whatever you would like. So Mac Hall is never a dull place. It's always super lively in here. And since I mentioned student services, which is a really big feature that we do have here at UCalgary, a lot of the student services that we do offer are going to be located within Mac Hall. And one of the really big ones that I like to point out, which is on the basement floor, as we currently are, is going to be our Center for Career and Personal Development, otherwise known as CCPD. So this is a space where if during your university career you are interested in potentially obtaining an internship opportunity, a part-time job, a co-op opportunity, anything like that, all of the incredible advisors here at CCPD are going to be able to give you a lot of advice relating to that. So for example, if you have questions on how to make a resume, how to improve your current resume, all the things that you should include on your CV, or what's the best message to be conveying in a cover letter, or even if you want to do a mock interview for a job that you're really hoping to get, CCPD offers all sorts of services related to that, and they can really help you kind of get a leg up in terms of the job industry. And then something else that's also kind of a service, but a bit more so of a resource, is something kind of just behind us over here. So that is going to be our official UFC campus bookstore. So this is where you can come find all of your UFC merch. If you're really big into merch like I am, then this is where you can find all of our UFC branded things. So anything you can think that to put a logo on, they've definitely done it, and it's going to be inside the bookstore. So for example, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, pencils, pencil cases, notebooks, anything like that with a UFC logo on it. If you really want some UFC merch, then that is a really great place to grab some. In addition to all of the really fun merchandise they have in there, they also do sell all of your course textbooks. So anything you're interested, anything that might be assigned as a course textbook for a class is going to be available to be purchased in the bookstore. And what's really nice is that we have a bunch of different options for you to be able to purchase in terms of textbooks. So we do have our physical copy textbooks, which are generally kind of a bit more of the expensive options. We also do have our e-copy textbooks, so that is online versions of the textbook that you're able to access, usually either on a rental basis, so for example for 6 to 8 months, or you're able to purchase them permanently, whatever you would like. That is another option we offer, and it tends to be a bit cheaper than the physical copy. And then in terms of kind of a third general option that some publishers might provide is going to be kind of a bundle where you get the physical as well as the e-copy. So that is generally probably going to be the most expensive out of all of the options, but again, you have those options to kind of pick and choose whatever you would prefer and whatever you feel kind of works best for you in terms of course textbook. However, in general, we do recognize the fact that textbooks can be really pricey. So something else that we offer on campus, which I think is a really great resource that we can offer to our students, is going to be our bound and copied bookstore, which is going to be that light blue wall down the hallway there, if you can see with the video. But essentially that is our secondhand consignment bookstore. So that is where students are able to go to purchase textbooks for that have been already used for a bit of a cheaper price than they were originally sold at. As well, that is where students can go to sell off their own textbooks that they've already used. So for example, if you finished a course and you just like to sell your textbook to earn a little bit of money back, that is where you're able to sell your textbook, and once someone purchases that, you will get that money back. So it's a really great kind of resource we have on campus for making money and saving money at the same time. So welcome to our next stop of the tour. We are currently in our kinesiology complex, and again you might notice that it is also called a complex, kind of similar to engineering, but it's a little simpler in this case because kinesiology essentially is a complex that's just made up of 2 buildings. So to be a little more specific, we are currently in kinesiology block B, and so something really neat about block B is that it does host a bunch of our active living services and a bunch of the amenities that you'll have access to as a UCalgary student. So right behind myself and we do have our racket center. So this is the biggest racket center, I guess, in general in all of North America, which is very cool that we have on our campus. And as a UCalgary student, you are able to kind of book out a court and be able to use it during a specified time period just to have a nice bit of activity as well as a bit of a break from your studies. So it's a really great way to just have some fun with friends as well. I recently got to go to the racket court for the first time with a group of friends, and while I was very bad at squash to begin with, I'd like to think that I got a little bit better. So it's a really fun way, again, to try new things as well, especially if you haven't played before. So that's a really cool amenity that we do have as a part of active living. And now something else that we walked by kind of at the beginning of the hallway is going to be our main fitness center over there. So essentially that is what we have as our gym on our campus. So essentially any equipment that you would like to use, such as weights, treadmills, things like that, that is what you're able to access in the fitness center. And so it's a really great space if you're just looking to have a quick workout or just need a bit of activity as well. And then kind of on the opposite side, we do have our big gym over here. This is our Jack Simpson Gymnasium, otherwise known as the Jack by all of our students. And so essentially it is our biggest gym and kind of our main gym of sorts that we have on our campus. Essentially it is 3 full basketball courts and also has seating that can seat upwards of 3,000 people. So something that we like to think of about the Jack is that it's a full circle moment that we have here on campus. So essentially this is where orientation will kick off with a big welcome ceremony and a pep rally for all of our first year students. It's a really great way to get to meet people and kind of get out there in your first year. So I always highly recommend going to orientation. And the reason, again, we call it a full circle moment is because while you have kind of the start of your UCalgary journey here, you also do have your convocation, otherwise known as your graduation, in the Jack. So it's kind of this big full circle moment, and occasionally when we do have parents on the tour that are UCalgary alum, you can see them get a bit emotional. So again, it's that really impactful full circle moment that we do have here on our campus. In addition to just being a full circle moment, it also does host a bunch of our Dinos games. Maybe if some of you are still in high school around Calgary, you might have had some of your high school sports games in this space. Anyone in grade 12, for example, might have also had their own graduation in the Jack. So it's kind of this big moment, a big full circle moment for a lot of people, as well as just a very important event space on our campus. welcome to the Olympic Oval. This is what I kind of like to call personally one of our crown jewels of campus. So this is a really cool space that is attached to our campus grounds. So essentially the Olympic Oval, if you aren't aware, was built for the 1988 Winter Olympics that were hosted here in Calgary and hosted all sorts of speed skating and skating related events in those Olympics, which is really cool. And so for current students, the main benefit of having the Olympic Oval is that as a part of your tuition and your active living services, you are able to public skate here for free anytime you would like during public skating hours. Again, I really highly recommend this because it is such a fun way to kind of get some exercise, get some activity, and also just to even hang out with friends if you can hassle together one of your groups of friends. It's a really great thing to do with them. So I really always highly recommend it. If you don't have your own skates or your own helmet, as helmets are mandatory in the Oval, you are able to rent them downstairs at our skate shop for, I believe, about a total of $7.50, and you can pick in terms of skates from speed skates or hockey skates. So again, if you don't have your own, you're still able to access the Oval by just purchasing some rentals. And again, really fun activity, and something that's cool about the Oval is that it's also still an active Olympic facility, so you might see a lot of national and international teams that are training here for upcoming speed skating events, and sometimes you might even see them in Mac Hall with their big bulky team jackets on that'll say where they're from, so that's always really cool to see on our campus.
Beautiful.
so welcome to our last stop of the tour. This is our Taylor Family Digital Library, otherwise known by most students as TFDL. Again, one of those really long names that we just shorten with an acronym. So essentially, the fact that this place is called a digital library is not to say that there aren't any physical resources here. There actually are a ton. However, one of the great things about this being a digital library is the fact that all of those resources have been digitized and are online available for you to use. So for example, if it's really hard for you to come into the campus very frequently and you would like to access some of those resources, whether it be for assignments or projects, maybe you need a journal article, for example, one of the great benefits is that you can access all of those from the comfort of your own home or wherever you are by using your UCalgary credentials as a student to be able to access all of those resources. So that's essentially why it is known as a digital library. Other than that, you might notice that there are a lot of students in this library, and if you can maybe kind of tell if there's like a lot of background chatter, for example, you'll actually notice that TFDL has something that's known as a noise code. So essentially with TFDL, the first 3 floors are used for a bunch of talking with other students, kind of working out loud, anything that you would like. Whereas if you're kind of a person who just needs a bit more of a calmer space to be doing your studying, then the upper 3 floors of TFDL, so floors 4 to 6, are going to be those spaces that are perfect for you. You'll have a lot less foot traffic up there, and it'll be a bit more of just a bit of a generally calmer environment in terms of the vibe of it. So it's going to be a really great space that you're able to study in, and so that's kind of a general layout of how TFDL is structured. One of the other things I always really like to highlight about TFDL is the fact that it has workrooms that you're able to book out. So while it has a bunch of desks that you're able to use kind of for your own study or study with others, you're actually able to take advantage of the fact that there are these spaces that you can book out for free for a couple hours every week, so you have your own private space to do some studying in. They come with generally a big group table for you to either study by yourself or with a bunch of your friends. And they also have TV monitors, so for example, if you want to do a mock presentation, they're a really great space to do so. And they also come with usually whiteboards on the wall, so if you're doing chemistry homework, for example, and you need to scribble some stuff on the wall, you're definitely able to do that as long as the wall is a whiteboard. But yeah, so that's another one of those amenities that I really like to mention. But with that, that's kind of the end of our tour for today. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed it and got some really good insights about the university, as well as saw some of the really cool things our campus has to offer. And we really hope to see you as a future dino soon.